over to you. You should be able to share your screen over me and get started here.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And it is a pleasure to be here today. So we're going to talk about using GIS for facility management. And this webinar, for the most part, is going to assume that our audience has little knowledge of GIS for the most part as we introduce it to facility management audience here. But an overview of what we're going to talk about here today. First of all, we're going to just briefly touch on what is GIS exactly. How does it compare to CAD? So we'll look at some of the similarities or differences there. I want to talk briefly about georeferencing. How do we get buildings and facilities in the right place within GIS? And then organizing floor plans. We'll discuss a little bit about routing and wayfinding, and IPS, that's indoor positioning systems. We're just going to briefly touch on those, but the majority of the time then will be spent showing you some examples of how you can actually use GIS with your facility management and how that can be integrated. So, and then we will definitely open it up. Bill might have mentioned this. We'll open it up at the end for questions. All right. So what is GIS? Geographic Information Systems. It's a way to create and manage and analyze all types of data through a mapping interface. So, there are some similarities to CAD that we'll talk about, but for the most part, GIS, it's a foundational platform that allows you to add data layers, and you can overlay those layers with one another. But ultimately, what you end up with is a powerful decision-making tool. And that's really what we're after here. We want to use it for improved decision-making, specifically for facility management in this case. So as we look at the differences or similarities between CAD and GIS, CAD, if you're familiar with using AutoCAD at all, many facility managers have either AutoCAD drawings that they frequently reference, or maybe their engineer or architect maintains their AutoCAD drawings for them, or maybe you just have PDFs. But the difference is GIS requires a geographic reference. So that, in other words, a latitude and longitude, or oftentimes in our case, what we're talking about would be a state plane coordinate system. So here in central Illinois, we are on in our particular county that we're located in, it is state plane west. Illinois is divided into two separate state planes for their coordinate system. You can begin a CAD drawing without having a coordinate system, but you cannot begin a GIS map or putting data to it without having a coordinate system. So that's one of the big differences. GIS does enable you to manage databases as well. Also, as I mentioned, it's really a decision-making tool, whereas CAD is more specific for design. You can also, within a GIS, you can recognize networks. So what I mean by that is you can have a system of, let's say, pipe networks for your water pipes, and they can actually, for lack of a better description, they can actually talk to one another. So you can see, for a wastewater example, you can trace which way the water flows through the pipes, and it'll essentially light up all the different pipes to show you what the path of travel of the fluids within that pipe are. And that's where GIS is different than CAD. It's got a little bit more of the intelligence and data side built into it. One thing too with GIS, it provides a centralized storage area for all of your data. So rather than having individual CAD files kind of scattered throughout a bunch of folders, GIS provides you one centralized interface for that. And then another thing is extract, transfer, and load. You might have heard of this term ETL. That refers to methods and workflows that allow you to take your CAD data and automate the workflow of getting it into GIS. And that's usually repeated on a regular process. So you might have a time frame set up on whether that's daily or weekly, or depending on how frequently you want that to happen. And it can go the other direction too. It can also help you go from GIS format into CAD to allow those workflows to work together. Georeferencing is the process of taking CAD information or PDFs. In this case, I'm showing you an example of a PDF floor plan, and it's assigning this particular item to real world coordinates. So like I mentioned, in a CAD file, you don't necessarily have to have real world coordinates. I remember oftentimes when I was working in CAD, I would start at maybe a made up coordinate of say 1000 X and 1000 Y, and I would just go from there. But in this case, georeferencing is going to assign that X and Y an actual latitude and longitude in space, so you can put it on a map and it will correspond then with GIS. So I've circled the points here in red. So it's kind of the steps I'll just walk through. First, we're adding reference data, which in this case is my floor plan. 2, I'm going to connect known positions, which would be, in the case of these red circles, it's building corners is what I would use for my reference here. And then once I connect those dots to where they belong in the real world, like on the map, I would verify that my scale is accurate. I want to make sure that this actually reflects correct scale in my map. Then I'll refine those results to really fine tune it and make sure that building is right where I need it to be within, let's say within an inch or two, as tight as I can get that with the data I've got provided. And then I'm going to finalize it by saving that georeference, those world coordinates, and those will then attach as a separate file. So now from here on, if I export my CAD file with that world file, I'm going to have the ability to reference that. GIS can also be used for organizing your floor plans. So your various different, floor plans, you can categorize those. You can visualize those interactively, as the example shown here in the picture. This person's using an iPad and they're referencing where they're at within the building on a floor plan on an interactive screen like that. So you can add unique floor plan IDs. You can categorize those floor plans. And let's say it's a building drawing or construction plan. You can categorize those: electrical, plumbing, HVAC. And I'm going to show you an example of that here in a little bit as we get into those. Also, the fact that this is floor aware is a powerful tool. From my experience, most CAD drawings come as a separate drawing for each floor. In the case of GIS, it allows you to store all of those floors in one location, and you're just able to toggle back and forth between those floors since it is a floor aware process. Routing and wayfinding is something that's very a powerful tool that's available for using GIS for facilities. So you might have an instance where you have a need for visitor engagement. You can open up a kiosk as you walk in the front door of the lobby for your facility, and visitors can then engage either through a web browser or a mobile device. It can be useful for new employees if they're not familiar on how to navigate the campus or not familiar with the large facility. It's great for new employees and being able to have them as well engage with that. Also, maintenance workflows. Obviously, your maintenance staff, it's important that they have easy access to location of assets and how to navigate throughout the building. And then safety and security, we're going to show you a good example of that as well. That'll identify the nearest, in this case that we'll look at would be a fire extinguisher, and quickly route your users to that location. Indoor positioning system, another really powerful tool that's available for GIS use cases for facilities. And there's different ways you can pick up we refer to this as the blue dot. So you're familiar with using the blue dot for navigation, bringing the blue dot indoors using indoor positioning. So it basically uses different receivers throughout the facility or campus. Oftentimes it's using beacons, it's using Bluetooth technology or Wi-Fi. And in some cases, the newer lighting systems have those capabilities built in. So in those cases, you have a continuous power supply. You don't necessarily need to replace the batteries in those. But as Bill mentioned, we're an Esri business partner. So there's exciting news coming in the world of IPS with Esri. They now have ArcGIS IPS, which is a separate standalone system. If you just want to add on your position, your blue dot, to your current indoor mapping solution, you can do that. Okay, now I'd like to jump into some of our examples. So we'll start off here looking at a floor plan viewer. Now this floor plan viewer is kind of just like it implies here. It's a way to visualize the floor plans interactively. And again, this is floor aware. So the example I'm showing you here This is a university, and I can be able to easily select and filter my buildings up here in my list and click on one of those, and it's going to zoom right to that specific building. And you'll see here it's very busy because in this case, as it zooms to the building, I have all the levels turned on here. But what I want to do is filter those levels for the one that I'm interested in. So I've got a floor level selector here that I'm actually going to use, and I'm going to toggle on to, let's say, level 1 that I want to visualize. And you can see my drawing looks much prettier, much cleaner here as I visualize only level 1 in this case. I've got many attribute features available here on the left that describe this building and some details on it. It gives me the address and all kinds of really valuable information that I can keep my data organized. It even tells me where I can find floor plans for this building, specifically with CAD drawings. I can select a room. It can give me more information on each room. I can pull up pop-up information showing me contact email, and I can make these dynamic, so I can click on that and send off an email directly to who might be in charge of managing that space. So a really valuable tool here as I view that floor plan. I can engage with it. In this case, they're color coded according to the use type of that particular space. And on my right, you'll notice I've got a big number down here on the bottom right representing the floor space, the square footage area, in this case, the net square feet of that particular floor. And again, I can easily toggle between my other floors within that facility to easily have updated information and be able to interact with those. And you can, in these pop-ups that I'm showing you, you can add different types of links to different information. It's very customizable. That's why when we use the word platform, that's what we mean. It's easy to customize and add and update features there. And then my pie chart on the top right is just showing a quick analysis of that particular floor and how the space is broken up. In this case, floor 3, I've got 30% of my floor space is office space, 28% is laboratory, and breaks it down from there. Okay. And then I could break it down and search for individual rooms. Of course, as we click on a room, it could zoom to that particular room and give me that information. Okay, next I'd like to take a look at more of a little bit more of an asset management scenario using a similar look and feel. This, what I'm showing you here, is an ArcGIS dashboard interface. It's pulling in a web map in the background here, and then the dashboard is what allows me to put in these selector tools at the top and have my attributes on the right. But for this case, with this example, we can select our facility once again. I'm going to select our main facility here, and you can see it zooms in and pulls up information on that particular building. Again, contact information, website, phone number. I can easily contact the owner or who's responsible for that particular facility. I can then filter by floor. In this case, we'll stick with floor 1. And now when I look at my selection of units, I can now easily choose from my units and select one, and it'll zoom right in tight into that location of that particular unit. And this can be really useful for, you can imagine a variety of things with planning, with emergency response, with being able to reference information and update it in that particular unit. Again, as I select the unit, I can report a problem. If there's a problem, that pulls up what's called a survey 123 form, and I can fill out, hey, I've got a problem with the lighting in this room. I've got an issue with furniture. Maybe there's a problem, there's a broken bed. I can report that. And if I needed to change the space, the use of the space, I could do that by editing those attributes as well and updating that information. One of the things we want to bring out here in this particular example is you can add different layers for the asset management. So here I have turned on a layer, a point layer for safety and security. And the neat thing about that, I can control those layers here. I can turn those on and off. And then I can actually engage with those on an individual basis. So as I click on one of these, in this case, we have looks like an AED here. And I could have, I could report an inspection on that AED. I could, again, report a problem. I could attach a photo of that, and that photo could show up here in my pop-up. Any information I wanted to look up there in that particular item would be able to be reflected here in my pop-up. I could also edit the location very easily by selecting that, and that would, in this case, I wouldn't edit that in my viewer, but it would kick me over to an editor app, and I could just move that point around where the correct location is. And the same thing with my fire extinguishers and other safety and security items. Here I have a special area for oxygen storage, and I have a little point there notifying that's flammable. And again, contact information and who's responsible for that. So this information could be maintained internally by the building owner, or it could also be, in some cases like this, maybe the fire department would be interested in maintaining this layer for my facility, or it could be a joint effort. The beauty of that is because I'm using a GIS platform, it's shareable and allows me to share this information either internally within my organization, or it also allows me to share it externally. So that's one of the powerful tools of GIS, is being able to share data across different organizations and across your own organization. Okay, then I'd like to move on here to exploring specifics of the ArcGIS indoors solution that Bill mentioned. I've got a video here pulled up. I wanted to run this video just because it's a little bit smoother today with my internet being remoted in. It was a little bit jumpy, so I wanted to just show this in a video and what this might look like for these examples here. So I wanted to look at a few of these. The first one would be the exploring a feature. So what we're going to see here is you'll see as we engage with the indoors viewer, it's going to explore various categories of features on the left-hand side here. And it's a really handy tool to easily select which category you're interested in. And then, of course, you can do a search for a specific name, for a specific ID. In this case, he's got a list pulled up of each particular monument across campus that he's interested in. Next, we can look at managing assets within the ArcGIS Indoors Viewer in this particular case. So here we've got an example where we are looking at, in this case, IT or IT network devices, and we're looking at wireless access points. And he easily opened up that, looked at a list of wireless access points. Now on the right-hand side, he's got some more detail on this particular wireless access point. And he can reference information from that. In this case, he's just going to the web and pulling up specifics on that wireless access point, but easy to manage those across the facility. And you can also visualize lines here as well. I know we're just showing the floor plans with points, but if I wanted to show actual wire and network routes, I could do that as well with this workflow. Next, I'd like to take a look here at the safety and security. So another example of that in the indoors viewer here. With this one, we're actually going to show how, as he clicks on the safety and security category there, we're exploring fire extinguishers. Now, what's interesting in this example is in the case of an emergency, we're looking for the closest fire extinguisher. He's highlighting here the distance, which is outlined in minutes, that's walking distance, of how close the nearest fire extinguisher is. If I set my home point at my location, it's not only showing you the nearest fire extinguisher, but it's also routing me to that nearest fire extinguisher. And then, of course, on the right, we're going to see as he pulls up more information here, it actually brings us to the ability to view this in a 3D imagery. This is using a technology called Matterport, which you may be familiar with. But I wanted to bring out here how easy it is to reference the 3D imagery directly from the GIS interactively. Okay, and another one here, as we mentioned earlier, having the opportunity to engage with visitors at your facility or campus. In this example, we're looking at a kiosk. So this is in kiosk mode, where the visitors would come into the lobby, they would see this on a screen, and this will give us a feel for what that might look like as they're able, again, to explore the categories, they can explore directions, and they can easily search different categories to say, where is the nearest? Or they could search by name, and it really allows them to engage from a visitor standpoint in a very user-friendly fashion to be able to engage with information across that facility or even across the entire campus in some cases. Another thing, as he's making those adjustments here, you can see in the drop down, being able to choose your route if you want it to be, say, handicap accessible, that's important. And you can be able to choose different routes based on what your particular needs are. So it's very valuable to have those capabilities there. Now we're getting into space planning, and I'm going to jump ahead here to show you a specific example for space planning. Space planning is useful, especially as we look to returning to work from COVID and allowing us to manage our facility from a standpoint of who goes where, how much capacity is available, who do I need to put where in what locations, how am I going to allocate my people resources within my space. And that's really what this tool is called. This is called a space planner tool from ArcGIS that allows us to basically take that same floor plan we've been viewing and now manage it from a people perspective. So I'm going to roll this and you'll see how we're going to select what we call hotels, which is just a designated area within the building. And we allot a capacity there. And now we're going to assign people to that space. So on the left-hand side, he's got a total people count of how many are not assigned. And there's 34, and as he drops them in there, we can see that change. What's also happening is as he drops people into these spaces, is it's updating the color of the floor plan. So now we know that the darker the color, the more full that space is becoming. It's becoming fuller and nearing its capacity. So that's really valuable to be able to visualize that from a mapping interface as we assign people and categories. It's just a great way to be able to manage that space and allocate that. So all of these are examples just of how you can integrate GIS with your facility management there. So we're going to close out that video now. And basically, last one here I wanted to show was a project planning tool. And in this case, you can see I've got a large campus manufacturing facility. And with this example, one of the challenges that this is addressing is allowing the facility managers to monitor and manage construction projects across the campus. So this is a simple GIS editor tool that allows us, we can click here and select the project. In this case, this is a large parking lot that they're managing a reconstruction project there. So we can select the type of project, and then we can add attributes there. We can add what year is that plan for reconstruction? Where is the money going to come from? And also, how much is that going to cost? And then we can have the dates assigned to that. When is it not only planned, what's the plan date, but what is the actual date of construction once it's complete? Very valuable information to have across an organization. If we look at another one here, we can see this is an architectural project. It's a wing addition and having information there as well. If I look out front here, I've got a small landscaping project. And these could be active projects that you show in red, say, when they're in the middle of construction, and maybe post-construction, they turn a different shade. So they're not as obvious on your screen. But again, just a way to easily manage these. I can add new projects, come in here, and let's say I wanted to do an update to my front entryway, and we'll just select here that I want to do a pavement project here. So let's say we're going to replace our circle drive, and we can come in and just outline that. We'll double click there. I can fill out my information. Another thing I didn't point out, but was you can choose attachments. So I could upload PDF files, add different things there to my particular construction project. Or in this case, I could also have project documents. If I click the little plus button down here, I can add a project document here. And let's just say, in this case, I could say pavement plan, and I could keep track of when it was submitted, what's the document category. So in this case, I'd say pavement, and I could say this is going to be construction plans, and I could have a link as well for that. So I could have a URL that links directly to those plans. And that's really where the power of GIS comes in, is being able to reference data very easily and have that available to the fingertips of the decision makers, and be able to pass that information along to really to anybody that's in your organization. So that kind of brings us to the end of our presentation here, at least the example part. ArcGIS for AutoCAD, just wanted to mention there's a couple options there you can tie in with GIS software. And then lastly, just to kind of finish up, just mention a little bit about our particular facility mapping services. Cloudpoint, we do offer data collection or implementation and training workshops, all of these to help you get started or enhance your GIS capabilities for your facility. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Bill at this point, but Bill, if we've got any questions that came through, now would be a good time for us to address those.
Yeah, we do have one. Obviously, someone with a little GIS background here. Question is, does perform inspection or edit attribute take you to a survey from survey 1, 2, 3? I think that was probably in the demo.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, it does. I didn't show that just for the sake of time. I didn't want to get too far into that, but yeah, it actually opens up a survey 1, 2, 3 form in the web browser. It opens that up separately. You fill out that form, and then that form is, when you enter that form and you save it, it's actually creating a point on the map as well, where you've got that particular problem reported. And then that can be used in a dashboard, and really a powerful way to allow people to report those and manage those needs across there.
That was the only one we had, guys. I did